I think that you need incentives to push the big majority, because people do not like to change. People like to do what they have done before. They like to because it's easy and it's something you know. And if you change, what might happen? You don't know. It's something unknown. So we need something to make you take the first step. And then, of course, it's easier for all to follow as well.
Welcome to the Shipping Podcast, where I meet interesting maritime professionals sharing their passion for the shipping industry and their everyday job. I am your host. My name is Lena Gothberg. Dear Shipping Podcast lovers, welcome to the 118th episode of the Shipping Podcast, where you will be meeting Heidi Johannessen Paulsrud, who is the Director of Sales and Marketing for exhaust gas cleaning at Wärtsilä. I had the pleasure of meeting Heidi at New Shipping earlier this year. We met on June the 6th. And I'm so happy to introduce to you yet another young woman who has a lot of knowledge to share with you. As you will hear, we jumped into the conversation instead of following my idea of making this into a lesson for rookies about engines, exhaust gas, scrubbers, etc. But if you just give it some time, we will soon get back on track and Heidi will give us a guided tour. So this is Heidi Paulsrud for you. Welcome to the Shipping Podcast. Could you please introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Heidi Paulsrud. I'm the sales director for EGC Sales and Marketing Department in Wärtsilä.
And what is your background?
My background is a chemical engineer. So I started, my education is a chemical engineer. So I started as that. And then of course, coincidences led me into the marine industry.
Yeah, that's interesting because I always ask people, how did you end up in the shipping industry?
Yes.
Because not a lot of people are looking out to come and be our colleagues.
No, and it was not in my, what I saw in my future either. So I was very firm that I should be working with chemistry. And then, of course, I started to work with chemistry. I was working in a lab, and I was also working at the Radium Hospital, where they are doing research on cancer. And then I started to work within sales of chemistry. And then I got pregnant with twins, and I had to stay home for a while. And when I was supposed to start working again, I had someone I knew that was working in the marine industry, and they needed someone to take care of their back office functions. So it was, going through contracts, making sure that everything was correct, and it was more this coordinating part of the work. So I started to work there part-time. And then, of course, as the time went by, I got more and more responsibility. So I ended up with doing sales again in the marine industry, and this time with engines. So I was actually learning by doing. So each day I learned more and more about engines, and I got more and more introduced to the marine industry. And then I've been in the marine industry ever since.
Yeah, it's hard to get out, isn't it?
Yeah.
You get the bug and you don't want to leave.
No, it's a challenging industry, and it's interesting. It's something to learn every day. You can focus on different things. It's people, you can look at the environment, it's technical, and it has been a lot of males in this industry, but now we see a lot of women coming into the industry as well, and that is positive, and it makes it even more complex and even more, gives it more variety, I think. Yeah.
I totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
So you are based here in Oslo, or?
No, we are based in Moss. It's about 60 kilometers south from Oslo. And it's the location is an old yard where they used to build vessels. So they built vessels at that location up until beginning of 1980s. And then, of course, other marine industries took over.
And what kind of engines are you selling then?
Today, I'm not selling engines, so I moved on from that. So now I'm working with cleaning the exhaust from the engine. So I moved over to the environmental part of it. And of course, it's also somehow connected to my chemical background because this is exhaust. It's sulfur that we are removing from the exhaust, and that is chemistry. So I'm moving a little bit back again to my basic knowledge.
Finally, I'm going to get someone to explain this to me then. So talk to me about engines and exhaust gas and SoX and NoX and all of that everyone is talking about. Give me the rookie lesson on that.
Okay. The basics for this is that there are regulations to reduce sulfur emissions to air. And shipping is, of course, it's a very environmental friendly way of transporting goods, but they emit a lot of exhaust to the air. And of course, they also use a lot of high sulfur fuel. So then it was decided by IMO that we needed to do something about this. And then we have this rule that you need to comply with the 0.5 sulfur emission in 2020. From our side, from my company's side, we thought about this a long time ago because originally the technology from my company is inert gas systems. And inert gas systems are cleaning the exhaust from sulfur and also emitting inert gas into the tanks to prevent them from to explode. And then they saw that, of course, we can use this technology to do something more. So already in 1993, that's a long time ago, the engineers in my company looked into this and they had a test installation at a vessel named Fjordsail where they looked into this. But in 1993, you didn't have any regulations. So there were no push to install this type of equipment on board a vessel. So the technology from our side was put on ice. And then when Marple came up with these new regulations now in the beginning of 2000, we started to look into it again.
So you think that regulations help?
I think that you need incentives to push the big majority because people do not like to change. People like to do what they have done before. They like to because it's easy and it's something you know. And if you change, what might happen? You don't know. It's something unknown. So we need something to make you take the first step. And then, of course, it's easier for all to follow as well.
Mm. Yeah, and we also have to take into consideration that you are ordering a ship which will not be delivered until 2-3 years once it's built, custom made, and then it has a lifetime of 25 years.
Yes. So you need to think that what you're putting into your vessel needs to last for a longer time. It's not like an iPhone that you switch after 2-3 years or even shorter. You need to build something that lasts, and then you also know that the technology is there to stay. So it's not an easy choice to make for a ship owner either. And also, in addition, it's not only sulfur emission they need to think about. There's a lot of new regulations that pushes them to do choices. And then, of course, they need to do the right choices. So my job is to educate them in what I mean is the right choice and how I feel that they best can reach the new requirements.
So how do you do that? What do you tell them then?
In the beginning, a big part of our job was to, tell about the technology, make them know that this is a technology for marine vessels, because for land-based industry, this is a well-known technology and they use it a lot in power plants. But it has not been put on vessels. Of course, it's also well known on vessels as inert gas systems, as I said, but that's a much smaller type of system, and it's cleaning exhaust from boilers, not from engines. So that is also the difference. And inert gas systems just operate maybe a couple of times a year. These exhaust gas systems are systems that will continuously operate while the vessel is operating. So my job was in the beginning to tell them about the technology, that it's, this tested, it's possible to use at sea. Today, it's more to make us stand out from the crowd, because today you have a lot of suppliers, a lot of newcomers that enter the business. So we need to show our experience and what makes us stand out from the rest.
Mm. And what about, I think about infrastructure on land, because it doesn't really help if you got the best engine if there is no fuel to be reached.
Yes, you think about the high sulfur fuel. And that is a lot of discussions going on related to that. And of course, we also pay close attention to the discussions. And we also go to these seminars, conferences that are put out there from the oil companies. And the message is quite clear that there will be heavy fuel available. They will have both type of fuels available. And also there is not today a capacity to produce enough low sulfur fuel to provide to the whole fleet. Of course, then you need to do changes to the refineries that are out there.
Yeah, they probably want to sell their products, so they will probably change it.
Yes, they might. And then, of course, you have the environmental side of it. And of course, there are different opinions of that also and different researchers. But if you look at the NC's report, for example, choosing scrubbers is actually a more environmental friendly solution than, for example, going for low sulfur fuel, because the refinery process and the amount of energy and water and what requires to refine from heavy fuel to gas oil, for example, requires a lot more CO2, about 7 to 10% more than using scrubbers will do. So if you also look at the CO2 emissions, then scrubbers is a quite viable alternative.
As long as it's a closed loop?
No, not as long as it's a closed loop when it comes to CO2, because it's not related to that. It's the amount of water that go through and the energy consumption. And it's if you use an open loop, the energy consumption is not much higher than if you go in a closed loop. So it's quite similar. So the difference is not in open closed loop. There it's more related to discharge of water to sea and not, yeah.
So maybe we forgot that this was a new beginners show. So what is a scrubber?
Yeah, a scrubber is basically a shell that allows exhaust and seawater to mix. And by doing this, of course, if we should start from the very beginning.
Yeah, let's back to if you have already got a ship which is now operating and you're not supposed to switch it out or scrap it. But you still have to live up to the regulations. So what can you do then when you convert your ship to the new regulations?
Yeah, then you can install a scrubber. And by installing a scrubber, you are removing sulfur from the air emissions. And basically, when you are burning fuel, the sulfur turns into SO2 and SO3. When you then, in the scrubber, mix this with seawater, the water changes or reacts with the SO2 and SO3 and turns it into sulfur acid. Sulfur acid gives the low pH. But in seawater, and this is why there are a lot of discussions of alkalinity. Alkalinity is carbonates and bicarbonates, and this reacts with the sulfuric acid, and turns it to sulfates. And sulfates is a natural constituent of the sea. So it's not harmful to the sea, like, for example, the SoX that goes out to air. So that is also a quite general misunderstanding that you're taking something from the air and putting it to the sea.
I'm so happy I met you. You can explain this to me so that even I can understand it. Okay, so you put a scrubber on a ship, but that's a heavy thing, isn't it? So you need to know that the ship doesn't sink of that.
Yes, of course. This is large equipment. So you need to make sure that you do weight calculations and that you are looking into the stability of the vessel and such. But that is also something that we in Wärtsilä can help you look into if you are not able to do it or you do not have the resources to do it yourself. So we are also adding extra services to you by adding these extra scopes. So we can look into basic designs. We can look into feasibility studies to see how you can fit this equipment on board a vessel. So there are usually not as complicated as it looks in the beginning, but you need to be aware of what you're doing.
So what is the trend now? What are people ordering when they are ordering new ships? What kind of fuel are they looking into?
Yeah, most of the new ships that are ordered are either requesting for a scrubber or LNG.
Oh, from the beginning, a scrubber from the beginning?
From the beginning, from the new build. So I think today 50% of our market is new builds.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize that. I thought they were going for one of the
older vessels.
Yeah.
Yes. No, it's quite a good trend on the new building side as well. So as you say, if you look at the lifetime of a vessel, 25 years, maybe a little bit more. It depends, of course, on the area and such. And of course, the size of the vessel. If you look into smaller vessels, the financials maybe need to be more evaluated. But if you look into larger vessels, the financials are there from the beginning. You burn a lot of fuel. The price differential between heavy fuel oil and low sulfur fuel oil doesn't have to be big. So immediately when you start operating the vessel, you will have the earnings by installing a scrubber. And that makes it quite easy for a ship operator or a ship owner to install this from the beginning, even on new builds.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I learn new things every day. So what about alternative fuels, other kinds of fuels? What do you see there? Do you see the hydrogen or things like that happening?
Of course, there is a lot of alternatives, and there will be a lot of alternatives. I don't think that the whole world will go for scrubbers. You will have a portion going for compliant fuel, normal low sulfur fuel oil. You will have a portion that go for scrubbers. You will also have a portion that goes for LNG. And then, of course, you have the fuels for the future. But you need to do something in between. And I can see that I started with scrubbers in 2010, and I know that it takes time to make decisions and it takes time to get it installed and do the plans. So it makes sense to do something in between before all these new things are available. And then, of course, we need to look into, in the meantime, what else can we use the scrubber for? Also, because the future calls for zero emission. And with scrubbers, you don't have zero emission at the moment, but we are constantly looking into how can we expand this with scrubbers. So now we have SoX. We are also working on NoX. You can do NoX with the SCR, but you can also take NoX in scrubber with EGR. We have done that already. So you can combine NoX and SoX in a regular scrubber with some add-ons. We are also looking into particulate matter, and that has been our focus from beginning. But as we started this discussion, there are no incentives of reducing particulate matter at the moment. You have no regulations on that. And one reason is that it's difficult to measure particulate matter. Another thing that is for the future on scrubbers is CO2. You can capture parts of CO2 in scrubber, but at the moment it requires a lot of caustic soda. Then what else can you do? There are a lot of ideas. Can you clean micro? A lot of water is going through a scrubber. Can you remove microplastic in a scrubber? Because you take a lot of water in and out. If you then can take microplastics out of the water when it's inside the vessel, and then you do something for the environment as well, there are a lot of possibilities there. So we need to think ahead. And I think that all those ideas are out there together with different fuels, but it's one step ahead and you need to do something in between. And then scrubbers is a really good alternative.
So if we talk about why do we do all these regulations? Why do we want to get rid of all the SoX and NoX? Because you are the chemist here.
Yes.
So what does it do to us as humans?
The sulfur, of course, is acid rain. So it destroys crops, it destroys buildings. It's not good for the environment, the forests. But also the SO2 and SO3 is not good for our breathing, for our lungs. And in addition, you also have the particulate matter. And actually here, particulate matter from low sulfur or MgO is more dangerous for human beings than from HFO, because MgO have much smaller particulates that gets much further down in our lungs and cause more harm. So it's important that we also look into how we can remove these things from the air. It's for you and me and our children.
Yeah, and that's why we got the regulations. And I mean, we live in the so-called SECA area. Mm-hmm. So when we got these regulations a little bit before the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. And I think I've never seen so many people with new ideas and inventions since it happened. But it also happened for a reason, and that's why I wanted to ask you what happens to us as humans if we don't do something about it.
Yeah. Mm. And we get sick.
Yeah.
Yeah. And especially in areas where you have very tight traffic, then you have a lot of emissions, and then, of course, the damage is bigger. Mm. So we are doing this for a reason. Definitely.
So how do you see the future for shipping in general?
I think there will always be the need for shipping. Shipping will always be there. You know, the ocean is how much? 71% or even more of our Earth. So we need to use the sea. And I think that the trends and what you see here at No Shipping also is that they are looking at new ways of using the sea for how can we, explore this area in, of course, a humane and environmental friendly way, but how can we use it better? Then you need shipping. Shipping is there to stay.
So how could we as an industry become more visible to attract more people to come and work with us?
Yeah, how can we be? It's fun, it's diverse. It's global, international. You meet people from over the world and you are exploring new ideas, and you have, one common field that make you more, having common topics to talk about. And so it's unifying, I think. Yeah.
And how do we get that message out of our own little bubble? Because we have a tendency to talk to each other and tell each other the news and the interesting stuff and so on, but no one outside knows about us.
Yeah, we need to be maybe more like an iPhone. We need to, and we have a huge focus on that also to digitalize, do smart marine, show the world, that we are also following the trends, because I think outside might look at us as a little bit old-fashioned. But we are definitely not. There are happening a lot of new ideas and new inventions also in the marine industry. So I think that we just need to get this message out. And by introducing these new type of technologies, we will show the world that it's interesting. And
I also know that Wärtsilä has been part of Slush for ages. And I didn't know that to be that your company was there, and that is also amazing to be in other places where we are not expected to be seen and show what we can do and how we do it. I think that's a great way forward as well.
Definitely, yeah. We need to be present at other arenas to show what we're doing. Yeah,
and also I attended a christening of a ship at Donsö outside Gothenburg, where I live, the other day. There were 400 school children on that ship all day long. Mm-hmm. And they were playing around. I don't think they were playing around, but they were allowed to touch and feel things.
And that is another important topic, that you need to include the younger people to the business and show them. And you have these youth organizations that are focusing on the marine business, and you need to, already in early age at school and during education, show them and introduce them to the marine industry. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just think about if you were never introduced to the marine industry, you would have lost out on so many things. And we would have lost out on a lot of things that and you bring into the industry.
Thank you.
Yeah, it makes me happy because there's so many young women that I meet who brings in new knowledge that we don't have in our industry, and that broadens us and gives us more than we think, I think. So I'm happy about that. Did you ever have a role model growing up?
Yes, I had several role models, I will say, but I am the youngest of 3 sisters. So I think my larger sisters has been my role models. They have been strong women. And we have been strong women in my family in general. So I've been allowed to do what I want, and they have showed me that it's possible to do what you want. So I think my sisters have been my role models. And of course, I also have had bosses during my career that has allowed me to grow and has allowed me to show what I know and what I can. And that is also important, that you are not put in a box, but you are allowed to do mistakes and you're allowed to try out and see who you are. And that also challenge you on the way. Yeah.
Who do you think I should interview the next? Who would you be interested in listening to?
There are many people out there. On Monday, there was this interesting presentation of this future vision of this group named SEED, which is this cooperation between different companies. And I think that they had some interesting ideas, and it was the result of a cooperation. So maybe someone from that team could be interesting to listen to.
Okay, I will see what I can do. Thank you very much. Thank you for taking the time to speak to me.
Thank you, Lena. It was nice to talk to you.
Wasn't that just great? Thank you, Heidi. Now we know a lot more about chemistry than we knew before, and I learned that scrubbers are installed on new buildings nowadays. I had no idea. So this was the 118th episode of the Shipping Podcast and the 56th female guest. As you can hear, I'm still not meeting my goal of 50% female interviewees, but I'm working on it. I wonder if there is any other maritime communication channel that has set a goal for diversity in their business plans. If they have, I would really like to know what the goal is and what they do to meet it. I can see that there are more women featured in trade press nowadays than it was earlier. And I have been asked by some of my colleagues how to get more females featured. So I know that there are ideas and plans to make that happen. As an advertiser, I also think that things are happening. There are women in pictures for job ads, and also more women when it comes to branding, to showing our industry as something not as old-fashioned and not as male-dominated as it has been. This is important if we're going to project an industry that is open-minded and forward-thinking to the next generation and compete with every other industry there is. I will leave you to think about how you can contribute to a more diverse maritime industry. And I promise you a female guest in the next episode as well. So, until the next time, from me to you, over and out. Thank you for listening to the Shipping Podcast. Don't forget to tell everyone that you meet that there is a Shipping Podcast available and that they should download it and listen to the maritime professionals who are sharing their passion for the shipping industry.